Welcome to the October 18th edition of the PFF Forecast. We have a stacked slate today. If you're coming to us from Twitter, you've seen we're going to talk about whether Mahomes is a system quarterback. How does Mike McCarthy order his stakes? We're going to analyze the difference between the Kellen Moore and Arthur Smith chin pictures. It's going to be a great episode. We may also talk SGPs and Week 7 bets. You'll have to stay to find out. Let's I've been told that graphic design should be my passion, but I think putting a Longhorn Steakhouse logo on Mike McCarthy's play sheet is the top of the mountain for me. I don't think it's going to get any better, to be honest with you guys.
Going downhill from there.
Have either of you ever been to Texas Longhorn Steakhouse?
In college, I have, and
Really?
yeah, it's not the worst meal I've ever had. There was it Texas Roadhouse where they have the peanuts when you walk in. Some people know what I'm talking about. I think that's even worse. You walk in. I was with a buddy with a peanut allergy. We had to walk out immediately because there's a gigantic bucket of shelled peanuts that you're supposed to nibble on as you wait, which is probably the grossest thing you can do.
I swear to God, I thought you said something else, and that was very scary. Which reminded me, did you guys see Desmond Howard on College Game Day screaming "Big Penix Energy"? Did you not? Neither of you seen this?
No, I did. I mean, come on. McAfee comes on the show and Dez trying to up the ante a little bit. Come on.
Absolute disaster. Okay, let's get into it. Welcome to all of you who are new to the podcast, and those of you who are longtime members of the Printing Press, welcome back. If you are not yet a member of the PFF Printing Press Discord, get involved. We will obviously talk about a ton of things on this podcast, but there are many things that you can only get through the Discord, including a lot of the first catch or catch on first drive props that Arjun puts out. A lot of the great things that Judah puts out around same game parlays. We talk about it here, but you want to be in the Discord to get all of that. And of course, any late breaking news and bets associated with it, you will find in there. It's a great community. So go join. The link is in our Twitter handles. You can find it there. All right, let's get started. We are on to Week 7. A lot of buys this week. I think 6 teams are on bye. So it's a light slate. And that means that we can all focus in on Aiden O'Connell, Tyler Bagent, which is where I think Taylor Swift is going this week, not surprisingly. Brad, let's start with injuries. Key injuries for us to take note of.
First of all, it's Tyson Bagent. Let's show some respect to a Shepherd University legend who I saw a tweet today, like 6 months ago. He threw 2 interceptions and took 8 sacks against Colorado School of Mines, and now he's playing the Las Vegas Raiders this Sunday. So, life comes at you fast. But anyway, kind of a bloodbath injury-wise across the NFL, in particular with a lot of quarterbacks. This Thursday matchup is going to be a ton of injuries. So we know Trevor Lawrence dealing with a knee. I think he is going to play. That is the expectation. I'll get into a bet I like because I don't think he's going to be very mobile. Walker Little's not going to play for them. Tyson Campbell's not going to play for them at corner, which is a big deal. Probably was going to see a lot of Chris Olave. On the Saints side, their tackles, Ryan Ramczyk is out. James Hurst is out. Their first backup, whose name is now escaping me, Landon Young, is also out. Trevor Penning, I guess, will play, but, he's busy kicking guys from the ground as opposed to trying to block people. So anyway, that game's going to be ugly. You then have Josh Allen. He said he's going to play today, said he's fine, but is dealing with a shoulder injury sustained in that Giants game. You mentioned the Aiden O'Connell, Tyson Bagent Privilege Bowl. Tank Dell for the Texans is not going to play. Kyron Williams, our guy with the Rams, probably out for a couple weeks. Some positive news. Deontay Johnson should be back for the Pittsburgh Steelers, practiced in full today. And then Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel, both questionable. I think both trending towards playing. We'll see. But yeah, that's the main roundup there.
So what you're saying is that it is time for Rashid Shaheed to once and for all have his breakout game. Judah, is that the takeaway?
Our king. I feel like he's had his breakout games. If they ever get him the ball consistently, that would be a privilege. But it just seems like every time the ball's thrown to him, it's a 40-yard catch and touchdown. He's mossing guys. He's breaking away. He's dynamic before the catch, at the catch point, after the catch, the whole thing. He's our guy, our king, Rashid Shaheed.
I actually was going to bring him up this roundabout here. I thought there's some injuries, as you mentioned, on the Jaguars. You assume they've got to put extra emphasis on Chris Olave. Certainly, I feel like that leaves them exposed to Shaheed. They have tried to get him involved a little bit more. And to your point, anytime they do get him involved, the guy has been absolutely dynamite. This, by the way, is a look at a tweet from Judah looking at PFF separation grades. We grade every single player on every route on multiple facets. So how well do they separate? You can kind of think about that as like route running, right? It's a combination of the ability to release and run the route and then separate, and then comparing that to their grade at the catch point and after the catch. This, I feel like we have not talked about Brandon Ayuk enough. Will we talk about him today? Perhaps going into Minnesota. We'll find out. All right. I comment here about Kyler Murray. Started practicing today. As someone that has some Kyler Murray shares, what is the timetable for that, Brad?
It looks like week 8's probably the earliest he'll actually play. It's still Josh Dobbs this weekend, but yeah, practice today, working his way back, sound optimistic. So we are going to get Kyler Murray maybe ahead of schedule in Arizona.
The why is this impactful? So a couple of things to think about. If you are playing in any survivor leagues, as I am, for example, and I'm now talking about it, so I'm definitely going to blow it this week. But like if you're in Circus Survivor, 9.4 million on the line, and you're kind of thinking about who you're going to take, you might think about taking the Cardinals before Kyler Murray comes back, or potentially you want to wait till he comes back. I don't know. They play the Seahawks this week. I think they're 7.5 point underdogs. I don't know that there's much else to make of that, but that's one thought betting wise that you might consider.
Yeah, once he's back, I think this team is interesting. Maybe not the first week as he works his way back in, but got Marquise Brown, got Michael Wilson coming along, good young player. We've talked about them a bunch. They're top 5 in scripted drives. They are top 10 in avoiding 3 and outs. Like they are a functional team in a lot of different ways. And, we love Josh Dobbs, but a healthy Kyler Murray should elevate that offense to another level.
Yeah, I'll even just add, like, if you go back to if you look at the evolution of the pricing of the Cardinals, right, they start from a point of like, this team is tanking. The assumption is they're going to be absolutely dreadful. And I think this kind of points to there was never any intention to tank, right? We said all along that Kyler Murray has every incentive to get back to play. This only, I think, kind of elevates that. And then if you look at how they've adjusted the Cardinals to what's happened this season, it is still a reflection of that initial pricing, right? That initial prior was this team is not tanking. And I think that's still important to keep in mind as we kind of like adjust the Cardinals to that offseason prior. And like, they're not tanking. That I think is pretty much clear. They also like designated Budda Baker. I didn't think he would come back anytime soon. Like, they're playing to win. And that's important to keep in mind.
And I think that means, so as we look forward into future seasons, right? I guess, Brad, we talked about this in the offseason. Like, I thought there was no chance, I thought they were going to end up the first pick, maybe the second pick too, and, end up with Caleb Williams. But it does not seem like that's in the cards. They may even be out of the Drake May sweepstakes if Kyler plays even decently, right?
Yeah, they might. And I think the thing there too is Houston is not going to give them a pick probably as early as we expected. It'll still probably be top half of the draft. But let's say they had 5 and 8, maybe you can convince the team at 3 or 2, whatever. If it's Chicago with both, or a team maybe it doesn't need quarterback, maybe you make a trade there. But now if they're at 7 and 14, like, you're not probably getting, you're more in the JJ McCarthy, et cetera, sweepstakes. So yeah, it changes things. I mean, Caleb Williams in navy and orange is going to be quite the sight.
Going to be beautiful. Some Niners injuries. They play on Monday, but your thoughts around Debo and CMC both playing?
Debo said he couldn't go back in the game this time because it was more of a pain management issue, whereas he did return the week before. I'm blanking who they played. Remember, he came back in the game after going to the blue tent, and it was I don't say rib, something like that. and he was
Nice.
able to manage the pain. This past week, he was just like, I was in too much pain to play. So I don't think the injury fundamentally is going to prevent him from playing football. I think it's more about getting up for the game and getting healthy. Maybe he doesn't have any carries, and they avoid some of like he's going to get hit on these plays. Let him catch the ball and maybe, do a Tyler Lockett and just kind of avoid contact. I think he does play, though.
Yeah, I kind of lean that way as well. All right, let's do a little weather roundup here. There is some weather this weekend, at least like 3 games, I think. You want to go over those?
Yep, 3 big games for sure. The first is the Commanders at the Giants. Sustained winds at 20 and gusts up to 35. That's a problem. That's going to impact passing for sure. Especially when it's probably going to be Tyrod Taylor, maybe Daniel Jones. Not a lot of arm strength for either guy. Howell kind of has a hose, so maybe he can mitigate it a little bit. But, you're going to see low average at the target. You are going to see impact there. Buffalo at New England. Sustained winds at 15 to 20, gust 25 to 30. This is where Josh Allen's shoulder is maybe a little bit interesting. Again, he said he's going to play to reporters today, but maybe he doesn't uncork it. And maybe more so, in my opinion, the factor he doesn't run as much, which would be a big benefit if they couldn't throw a lot, is his running ability. But you even saw in the Giants game, they get down in the red zone. Them not using his legs in the red zone, it kind of exposes how not good they are or not great they are in the red zone. They've improved this year compared to I think they're worse this year compared to last year. A lot of people have pointed to Daboll versus Ken Dorsey. I think also part of it is, Allen's not throwing his body on the line quite as much. He still does it. But anyway, those 2. The last big one, I think, is Detroit at Baltimore. Sustained winds 15 to 20, gusts at 30. I think you could argue kind of either way who this impacts more. 2 teams that are good at running the football. Obviously, Baltimore probably as good as anyone. The issue here is the Lions don't have a healthy running back on the roster. I don't think Montgomery plays. Gibbs obviously is not a between the tackle guy or a 30 carry guy. But then their backups like Craig Reynolds is dinged up. They're missing a lot of ball carriers, and that might matter given the lack of ability to throw a lot.
Jahmyr Gibbs is the breakout game for him. He's going to get 8 carries in this game. Sunday night game has some wind here, which I think is noteworthy given it's being played in Philly, not in Miami. Miami on the road, in a little bit of wind, and Tua, seems to throw those kind of flutterers up there. So this would worry me a little bit. It's interesting. Arjun brought this up in our Slack about how the Dolphins have been so good at generating positive EPA from throws behind the line of scrimmage. And I'm curious your guys' take on this. That certainly is in part because Mike McDaniel is a wizard. But I have to think that a lot of that is also the fact that teams are willing to give them that because they don't want Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle running right past them. And so they're going to, kind of give those up in favor of not giving up longer pass plays. Are you guys as concerned potentially about the Dolphins playing in wind on the road as I am?
I am also because I talked about this a little bit when discussing props the other day. The Eagles actually allow a ton of receptions underneath, but they're also then one of the more sound tackling teams at not letting teams get yards after the catch. So I think they were at that time second in receptions by running backs, but were 18th in receiving yards by running backs because they didn't actually allow them to run after the catch. So yeah, it does impact this game. If you can, shrink the box a little bit or, kind of shrink your coverage shell because you're not worried about, Tua throwing bombs, yeah, it's going to have an impact.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree here. Maybe it has some impact. I think, George, to answer your question, if you're the Dolphins, the greatest thing in the world is if the Eagles, don't play this kind of structure that limits explosive plays. Because what you're going to do is be like, okay, I'll take my chances where wind is just barely starting to really influence the passing game and be like, yeah, I'll take my chances with Tyreek Hill deep if you're going to give me that. I think that's honestly, that would be the best thing for the Dolphins.
So you're going full contrarian.
And I guess. I don't know. I guess it's contrarian. But I would not be worried.
Go ahead.
It's interesting. So the total of this game, 51.5, I think that's down a little bit from where it opened. I've actually seen the wind come down ever so slightly since this weather report came up. You can also see that the last hour of the game, it's going to be below 15. 15 is kind of that. It's not like a hard cutoff. Obviously, that's not how math works. But if it is decreasing as the game goes on, later in the game, That's an opportunity, I think, from a live betting perspective to think about this game. This is something I think for us to watch live in prime time is what that looks like and how the Eagles are playing it. Maybe it takes the Dolphins a second to figure it out and potentially it's an opportunity to live bet an over or the Dolphins.
No, yeah, Judah sold me. I think I agree now because it is, like you said, it's trending the opposite direction. Nighttime, usually the winds die down a little bit. And so, yeah, I mean, Philly might not actually do that. But if they do, I'm kind of on board now. Plus, like Tyreek Hill is as good of a tracker of deep balls as anyone in the NFL. He can also kind of like juke guys out and make them think he's going to, like it could play in their favor.
Yeah, I do love the spot for Philly. And maybe we'll talk about this here in the next segment. I really like the spot for Philly coming home after a somewhat embarrassing L. I think it's got to be pretty embarrassing for them to lose to Zach Wilson. And, I've talked about this probably every podcast, but I thought it was really interesting the way that so the Dolphins use motion at the snap more than any team, and it's not even remotely close. It is just not even close. And they're killing teams off of motion. And Tyreek Hill talked about in Buffalo, they were really hurt offensively because so much of their motion at the snap is based on timing. And so if you don't have that timing, and he said, we literally have to hear things. Anyone that's been to Philly, Judah, you live in Philly, the fans are going to be after this game. They're going to be freaking loud. Okay. So if you think that has an impact, I think there's two ways to think about it. One is, okay, the Dolphins had to deal with that. They're going to be way more prepared this time around. But also, how much can you prepare for the fact that you can't hear shit? Do you have to change your game? And does that take away some of the things that they want to do? I don't know if either of you have a take on that one way or another. But I think it's a really interesting subplot to this game.
I'll say that I think that's all true and fair. But at the end of the day, the way I'm approaching this is saying, like, those are all the reasons fairly that the price is what it is. Because I don't think you can say right now that the Dolphins are a little bit worse than the Eagles on a neutral field. If the line's at like 2.5 and home field advantage is probably worth 1.5. The thing, right? Football is an incredibly random and variant game. The thing I have the most confidence in is in elite offenses playing at an elite clip. I also think it's like worth noting just how much better Miami is than every other offense. Looking at just like earned drives specifically, which is just one metric, and really, if you look at anything, it'll paint the same story. They're like 0.6 points per drive better than the next best team. Like they're 11 drives on average in a game. That's a like huge margin. That's close to a touchdown better than the next team. It's not just that they're number one. They're number one by a huge margin. And like, sure, that's probably not going to sustain itself over the course of a season, but I think it's certainly directionally right and directionally close. And I want to bet on the best offenses, especially if they're ever being priced at a discount. And that's just kind of the angle. It's like if the Chiefs are ever at a like real discount, I'm going to bet on the Chiefs. I think the Dolphins are kind of in that same class. And all of these things might be true, and I could be totally wrong. And all these angles, and they could not hear anything. But at the end of the day, I want to put stock in just like one limited thing, which is that this Dolphins offense is as good as advertised, and nothing can really stop that.
There you have it. Prize Picks, place that you can put your money where your mouth is, no matter where you live. Daily fantasy sports is legal pretty much across the United States. So go to Prize Picks. It's a skill-based, real money daily fantasy game. And this is how it works. You pick 2 to 6 players, and if they go more or less than their Prize Picks projection, and then if you are right, you can win up to 25x your money on any entry. So we just talked about some of the Dolphins and a few other games. We're going to talk about all the games here in a second. And you can go get involved. We talk about like Ayuk, Rashid Shaheed. They're all on there. So go to Prize Picks, get your picks down, and win up to 25 times your entry. To do so, go to prizepicks.com/forecast and use the code forecast for a first deposit match of up to $100. Pretty solid. Again, that's prizepicks.com/forecast and use promo code forecast for a first deposit match of up to $100. Also, our friends at Manscaped, they're getting you ready for your Halloween costume. Unless you want your body hair to be the costume that you're rocking with, which you probably don't, you want to get involved in Halloween by Manscaped, making sure that you're not sweating underneath your hideous costume. By the way, guys, my costume for Halloween, I think it's so brilliant. Buddy and I are going to dress up as the Chainsmokers. going to be sick. We're going to play Chainsmokers music the whole night, and people are just going to be so confused. They're going to have no idea what. Everyone's going to dress up as Barbie and Ken. Every single person is Barbie and Ken, and we're going to be the Chainsmokers. It's going to be hilarious.
Like tracksuits? What does that entail?
It's like nothing, right?
Yeah,
it's like you're just like playing music that like that everyone's heard a bunch, and confusing the hell out of the people that are at the party. Anyways, Manscaped, skin safe with the handyman technology to keep you from having too many nicks and cuts. The Lawnmower 4.0, fantastic for all of the body hair that you want to get rid of. And they now have a great face clippers and a bunch of accoutrement to go with it to make sure that your face is in good shape. It's called the Beard Hedger Pro Kit, and it is fantastic. I use them all. I can attest to the fact that the battery lasts forever. The product is very quality. So here's what you do. Go to manscaped.com, use promo code PFF and get 20% off plus free shipping. Exactly. Thank you. That's the whole point. It's like no one wants to listen to Chainsmokers on Halloween, and you'll have to listen to them. And it's going to be great.
The monster mashup. That's you guys. Yeah.
Exactly. We also thought maybe on the invite we could put like featuring special musical guests, Chainsmokers, and then just pretending that we were actually the Chainsmokers because no one knows what the Chainsmokers look like.
Right? I'm not saying you do this because I know you're the most health conscious guy. I maybe know, but it'd be funny if two people did the Chainsmokers and then just rip cigs the entire time, and that they didn't actually dress up at all. They were just choking down darts. So it's a thought for the listeners out there.
That would be funny. I obviously will not be doing that. But like, could you pick these guys out of a lineup? Like, there's no way.
No.
Come on. These are just guys that live in Huntington Beach.
You just Google 2 frat guys and it would give you the same result. Like it's like,
hey,
Google
welcome to
Kai, California.
Oh, it's amazing. All right. There you go. You're welcome. All right, let's get into it. It is time for same game parlays with Judah. As many of you know, Judah does not do same game parlays the way that most do, which is just parlaying a bunch of random stuff together. He creates a data-based narrative that gives you a real chance at actually finding a tail event. You publish your favorites on PFF.com, so we get a PFF Plus subscriptions. You can access that on the web and the app. And of course, if you are a member of the Printing Press and you listen to this podcast, we discuss the angles that you like best here first on this podcast. I will let you take it away, Judah.
Yeah, this is definitely a bit of an interesting week. And I also think we're at the point of the season where prices have kind of adjusted, but I think there's still some spots to dive into. I'm going to be playing a Jordan Love to Christian Watson build against the Broncos. The Broncos are very, very beatable deep, obviously. We've learned that the Packers really can't run the ball. And Jordan Love is one of the highest ADOTs in the league. And his if you look at his deep passing, it hasn't been great. But also a lot of deep passing is really a function of wide receiver play. This is a PFF data study we've done. And I think getting Christian Watson back, who was one of the best last year, will really help with that. And the other kind of angle here is that the Broncos offense, which looked like a really good unit, it seems like more of that was just like Commanders bad, Bears bad. And I think that if you especially include a game script where Russell Wilson takes too many sacks, the Broncos are not able to sustain drives. That's something like a Wilson alt under combined with this leg, basically saying the Packers are going to have more play volume. Also to note, especially with volume stats, the Packers had been one of the slowest offenses in the NFL, basically ranked 32nd every year of the Aaron Rodgers, Matt LaFleur years. They started early this season that way. They've actually really sped up their pace in recent weeks. And I don't think any of that's going to be properly accounted for in this pricing. The line is at I'm seeing 227. I think if we can get a 275 and a Christian Watson 100 yards and a touchdown, maybe combining that with some Broncos unders with more play volume, I think that's certainly an attractive spot. Maybe one last time we can really get to expose this Broncos defense.
Their offense has looked also so awful. I like that Broncos under. That was a complete lock against the Chiefs. The other thing that's interesting about you mentioned how that's kind of deep passing is sort of on the receiver it's also an incredibly small sample and unstable, stat. So just because Jordan Love has not been good throwing the deep ball to this point, I don't think is, a reason to kind of run away from it. It's just not super predictive. And then you look at the coverage unit for the Broncos, as you mentioned, it's been pretty bad. And I'm not sure there's, Patrick Surtain has been someone that is kind of shadowed, but I don't know if he shadows Christian Watson.
No, I think the highest he shadows is like 60%.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure he'll do that with Watson.
Like it. All right, what's up next?
Yeah, this one is a tough one, but I think there's some value, and that's Desmond Ritter's thrown for 300 yards each of the last 2 games. I think the Bucs are a little bit of a funnel defense. They're going to stop the run, I think, decently well. I think we've seen the Falcons' pass rate increase over the last couple of weeks. Again, some of that is playing in a poor game script, but even if you look at the pass rate over expected, it's going up. And the books are just pricing the Falcons of an extremely low passing volume, low efficiency. Yes, they're going to take sacks, but when Kyle Pitts' is prop is 37 and Drake London's is 48 and Desmond Ritter's is 208, if we get an offense that looks mildly similar to the last 2 weeks, and sure, Tampa Bay is a step up, but I still think they're going to filter towards the pass. Those guys are super talented. We don't really know where the ball is going because they could decide not to run Pitts and London with any routes. But when they do run routes, they get targeted at an extremely high rate. Their props are extremely, extremely low against what I think is a pretty overrated Bucs secondary. I'm going to take this bet basically on the assumption that Desmond Ridder, the sample that is going into this prop right now, has a lot of this extreme run-heavy offense. I don't think that will be the case, and this is not exactly a matchup to fear.
Just real quick, over the last 2 weeks, Kyle Pitts and Drake London, 26 receptions for 333 yards and 9 explosive receptions over just 2 games.
Right. If that's the sample, and it doesn't have to be exactly that, but even if it's most of that and not a lot of the no targets sample, and this team is going to pass the ball 18 times, which is what's being priced into this initial line, I want to be on that.
This feels very similar to me to the Bears from a couple weeks ago. And, the 275 plus DJ Moore, plus Bears minus 5.5. Very, very similar, where you have a passer that has just been so decrepit for so long that, they're not going to adjust. I also, I get the sense that while Arthur Smith has been I don't care about your fantasy team or any of that, it's got to feel good when Kyle Pitts and Drake London are actually good players. So I don't think that he's an evil guy. Now maybe he comes back and he puts them both on the bench and doesn't play them this week, and it's the Jonnu Smith show. But look, they've invested a lot of capital in those guys. And so I've got to think that he's getting a lot of praise probably internally, for unlocking them. And he's going to keep leaning into that. This is one of my favorites. The fade Desmond Ridder against the spread, I continue to kind of believe in, but might not be this spot. And I certainly don't think there's a reason to not to think that they might try and continue to have him air the ball out, especially because they need to learn whether he can or not as well, right? Whether they're going to go draft somebody. I love both of those. Any others, Judah?
I think these are more alt line based, but I think you can turn into same game parlays. That's going to be the Rams versus the Steelers. I feel like it's every week now. I'm fading the Steelers on both sides of the ball. I think if you can mitigate the pass rush, this is one of the worst secondaries in the league. The Rams will be able to generate separation early in the play. I mean, Cooper Kupp looks as dynamic as ever. No real limitations there, especially with no healthy running backs. I expect the Rams to pass a ton, which I think plays into their strengths here. I can see this as a spot where the Pittsburgh Steelers offense right now is being if you look at the unpredictable market rankings, is about 21st right now. They've played at the 32nd best rate. And sure, Deontay Johnson is coming back. We've also now seen 2 years of Kenny Pickett throwing into tight windows at the highest rate in the NFL. The team forcing coverage mistakes at one of the worst rates in the NFL. There are massive schematic issues that, yes, Deontay Johnson helps, but a lot of that's not just going away overnight. I think the Rams defense has been perfectly average, which is a big shock. They're, above average in quick pressure rate, all of these things that I, again, would not be surprised to see this is more of an alt line than a same game parlay. I would not be at all surprised to see the Rams build out a big lead. They can definitely pass. And I'm not sure the Pittsburgh Steelers can keep up on offense, especially relative to the market, which is pricing them at like a 21st best offense when their production is 32nd.
This is actually going to be featured in one of my locks of the week that I like. Question from someone in the chat. Do you gentlemen buy into the concept of taking a wide receiver's reception under prop with the same receiver over in yards prop? It spikes the money, the plus money, so to speak, i.e. Hill under 6 receptions, but over 160 yards.
I mean, it's all relative to the price and what the correlation is being priced at, of course. But sure, if the angle is that, like, I'm going to take Marvin Mims because the book is pricing in some correlation of like an average receiver, but I know that all of his yards are going to come from deep balls, or like a Jalen Hyatt, where the play a Rashid Shaheed. But I'm holding out. Maybe I'm just holding out hope. But one day I'm expecting like a 15 target game from Rashid Shaheed, and he's going to go for like 12 receptions, 180 yards, and 2 touchdowns. If they ever decided to give him 15 targets. But Rashid Shaheed would be another good example. I think the answer is just it really depends on the receiver and the correlation. But yeah, if the play is this is only a deep threat, I'd be fine with that.
The Randy Moss photo where he's got 3 receptions for 163 and 3 touchdowns. Rashid Shaheed is going to recreate that this week, and it's going to be glorious. Anything else for us before we get on to the locks of the week?
Yeah. The last one I'll say, I mean, we touched on this briefly. I'm all over the Dolphins this week, especially. I want to be. The wind is, I think, more impactful when it's 15, 20 miles per hour to the kicking game, which actually I think would hurt the Eagles more than it would hurt the Dolphins, considering the Eagles do have one of the best kickers in the NFL, and the Dolphins don't really kick field goals. They'll go for it on 4th down, and they just score touchdowns. But yeah, if the market's going to price in, to his prop is 265. I think this matchup sets up really well for him. The Eagles do have a ferocious line on paper. They're not generating pressure. They're not generating quick pressure. None of that really matters anyway when Tua is getting rid of the ball in like 2.4 seconds and throwing it 9 yards downfield. There's no one on the Eagles who can cover. I mean, Josh Jobe's been maybe the worst corner in the NFL by the separation numbers. Got to update those for this week. But even his PFF coverage grade, as you see, 42.9, an absolute disaster. I just think the Dolphins offense is going to run all over this. This is not a difficult matchup. Sure, maybe the context matters. Maybe they're not hearing signs, but I'm going to be more than happy to bet that the Dolphins will put up a huge number of points, especially when the market is pricing it at some discount.
That was what we were thinking on Sunday night, Brad, as we took the money line for our Dolphins. All right, it's time for locks of the week. Before we get there, you want to spend your Sunday in peace and tranquility, watching all of your bets hit. But one thing you don't want to do is have to worry about your family and whether or not they are safe and sound. So get yourself great term life insurance from Fabric by Gerber Life, and you will be in good shape and good hands going forward, and you can enjoy your Sunday in total peace. It's all online. Go to meetfabric.com/forecast and get yourself a great and affordable term life insurance coverage in less than 10 minutes. No health exam required. It's super easy. You can do it from your couch. So go make that happen right now. Protect your family and enjoy your Sunday with Fabric by Gerber Life. All right. It is time for some locks of the week. As you probably know, we go around the horn and discuss our favorite bets, and we try and pick our favorite ones. One thing that I have noted is that we tend to choose some really good bets and then pick the ones that don't do as well. So this week, we've got to reverse that mojo a little bit. I think we're like sitting dead on. We track these at BetStamp, so you can go see them. I think we're sitting like pretty much even on the year. So it's time to reverse a little bit of that mojo. TJ Hawkinson, I cannot believe you. I can't. You might disown you as naming you TJ Hawkinson is very hurtful, what you did to us last week. And Tyler Conklin was like 2 yards short. So absolutely despicable, just despicable. Yes, people who actually party know the chain smokers look like. Debatable, very debatable. They do have a residency in Vegas, so he has something. That's how I came up with the idea. When I was in Vegas last week, someone said, "Yeah, we're going out tonight." I was like, "Where are you guys going?" And they're like, "I think we're going to see the Chainsmokers." And I had to like hold back some laughter. So like, I can't imagine going out to see the Chainsmokers, but they just happen to be playing. I think they have a residency at XS or something like that.
Thing is, even the artists I do like, I don't know what they look like. I don't know. maybe that's just me.
Do you know what Deadmau5 looks like?
Yeah, he's got a big mask on. Yeah, I know that. I went to Lollapalooza like 6 years in a row. If you're a teen from the Chicagoland area, you went to Lollapalooza, you saw a lot of Deadmau5. Anyway, we're back on a Chainsmokers tangent. Should I jump in? Should we get some good locks, some quality or quantity locks? So I'll start with a prop just because we always like to get props here on the Wednesday show, even though for some reason books are not hanging them so far. This isn't out there yet, but it is a prop I like a lot whenever it does come out. I mentioned it in the beginning of the show. So Trevor Lawrence has the knee injury. I do think he's going to play, but I do not think he's going to be 100% healthy by any stretch. You look at when Trevor Lawrence throws the ball in 2 seconds or less, Evan Ingram has a dozen more catches than any other player and like 15 more targets than any other player. And the Saints have good corners, both outside and in the slot. I think they have good linebackers too, good safeties as well. But I think Ingram is the guy on the quick outs that he's going to target. He's had 4 or more catches in every single game. I'm guessing it's going to be 4.5 on the prop here. If it's 5.5, you probably get plus money. I still think I like it. I just think it's going to be a funnel to Evan Ingram. So we'll start there, and then we'll get into some spreads and totals and whatnot after that.
Also, the Saints' stout run defense as well, right? So,
yep.
Like that one a lot. Judah.
That's also an interesting parlay angle, Brad. I like that a lot. I'm going to go with the Lions minus 2.5. The best price I found on that is plus 156. I mean, we talked about this a bit in our Slack group as the London game was going on. I think the Ravens are kind of fraudulent. The market is pricing them as the 7th best team in the league. By my numbers, this is a lot closer to a middle of the pack team. I don't think they're going to. The Lions' run defense has been an absolute revelation this year. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball against them, especially if Brian Branch is back. The secondary should also be improved. At what point are we going to say that the Lions are kind of a top 5 offense? They've done it now for 2 years. And I think a lot of the Ravens' success on defense is kind of propelled by the quarterbacks they faced. CJ Stroud in his first game, they faced DTR. They faced Kenny Pickett. They faced a crippled Joe Burrow. I don't think they've actually faced an offense of this caliber. And I think Mike McDonald is a terrific defensive coordinator, and he's really, really good when he can take advantage of weak offensive coaches. I don't think that is going to be the case with Ben Johnson. I think who can strike right back. They don't have really any talent on this defensive line, especially with Odafe Owe hurt. Though he might be back. Either way, the Lions, I think their pass protection will be able to slow this pass rush, and they really just don't have the talent to keep up with the Lions wide receivers, which all of a sudden look like a really, really terrific unit, especially with Jameson Williams back. Josh Reynolds has been amazing. Sam Laporta has been way better than anyone's expectation. Amon-Ra St. Brown has obviously been terrific. I'm not exactly worried about the running attack with David Montgomery down. I don't think you're going to run on the Ravens anyway. They played this game last week, also in similar wind conditions. Jared Goff threw for 353 yards. I'm really not worried about this team. The market is pricing them as like the 9th best team in the league. The Ravens, the 7th best team in the league. At minimum, those should be flipped. I think the Ravens are probably closer to like 12 to 15 by the time the season's done.
Yeah, it's interesting. We talked about this one on Sunday as well. And I do think that, the wind and that, people are going to think that really favors the Ravens here. I don't know. I think it's really interesting. It seems like everyone out there is kind of trying to make a case for the Ravens being better than they have actually looked, which sometimes you can make a lot of money off of. But 3 certainly feels still a little bit rich for me. So you're taking an alt line, Lions minus 2.5 at like plus 150. All right. My first one, we talked about this game briefly. These Pittsburgh Steelers, they cannot cover anybody. And you know who they're not going to cover on Sunday is Cooper Kupp. So what I do think they'll be able to do is get pressure. This will be a ton of Steelers in the house. The Rams will not be able to run the ball. They don't have any running backs. They're offensive line is crap. So what are they going to do? They're going to get the ball out quickly. There's no one that's going to cover Cooper Kupp. Under pressure and against the blitz, Cooper Kupp, his target rate increases even more dramatically over the absurd amount that it is previously. So I really like, again, numbers are not out. I'm guessing it's going to be 7.5. I like the receptions. I honestly think that the yards is a nice play as well. You've talked about the Rams a little bit. Judah, I like that as a same game parlay. But yeah, I think Cooper Kupp looks totally back. And I think Puka Nacua honestly helps him here because you can't just totally focus on him. Doesn't matter anyways, because in the slot, he's going to be facing the great Shannon Sullivan and his 49.3 PFF coverage grade. So overs on our guy, Cooper Kupp. Brad.
Yeah, love that. And obviously, Lions, my favorite play of the week. So I like both of those a lot. I'll get our first Wong teaser on the board. We mentioned the Atlanta. What up?
I was just saying yes.
Yeah, got to do it. Got to do it.
We're all
They're
excited.
hitting for us the last couple of weeks, so we got to get continue that roll. I think it should be meaningful when I'm back in the Atlanta Falcons because I think I've faded the Atlanta Falcons in every game so far this year. As Judah mentioned, I think Tampa Bay is equally as fraudulent as I've felt Atlanta is the entire season. They're still a bottom 8 team in success rate on offense. We saw them play a good Lions team. Their defense is pretty good, but I think this game is going to be extremely low scoring. You get Atlanta out to 8.5. And as you mentioned, I think you are going to have funneling. You know, Todd Bowles is aggressive, but he does play a lot of zone. And I think he will allow Drake London and Kyle Pitts to get the ball in space, and maybe they can make some guys miss. But really, it's just about this game is going to be extremely low scoring, and you push it out to 8.5. And then Seattle, you know, come off the bye, kind of lay an egg against Cincinnati. You know, Geno's, box score looked ugly. They actually watched that game. I thought he played pretty well. They just could not score down in the red zone. The Bengals defense kind of looks like the Bengals defense of old now. I actually thought Seattle's defense looked very good. Joe Burrow, I didn't think looked good in this game either. And I think it was because of what Seattle was doing. So anyway, just a bad result. Not a good score. They didn't cover, but I love them down to 1.5. So you got Atlanta up to 8.5. Seattle minus 1.5 against the fighting Josh Dobbses for one last ride.
One last ride with Josh Dobbs. It's interesting. I was going to mention a couple of other teaser legs here, and maybe we do just while you've got them up. I think the Giants out to 8.5 is interesting. Why? Weather going to be awful there. Sam Howell takes a ton of sacks, very, very low total. I'm not advocating that the Giants are back by any stretch of the imagination. And this is probably buying them a little bit at the top of the market. But in such a low scoring game, 8.5 is going to be worth a little bit more, which I think is worth noting. We talked about San Francisco and getting them down to 1. That total, I believe, is like 44, so a little bit higher, but still certainly lower than you might kind of fear on any of these teasers. And in the last one, Thursday night, you can take the Jags out to 7.5 against Derek Carr, who, if he sees a lead approach 2 scores, he immediately cowers in fear and makes sure that becomes a 1-score game very, very quickly. So just a couple of others to mention. Judah?
Yeah, it's funny. I was also going with I was going to go with the teaser route, and I think all of my legs have been mentioned.
Which one do you like best?
I would say probably the Falcons and the Niners. Those are my 2.
Me too. Obviously, I mentioned the Seahawks, but Niners, of your 3 you just mentioned, Niners is my favorite.
Yeah.
Got to read
the next one. Yeah.
Jeez.
I'll go with one for tomorrow night. That's going to be Josh Allen of the Jacksonville Jaguars to get over 0.25 sacks, half a sack or better. I mean, there are just injuries. The Saints O-line as it is dreadful. Their injuries are, I mean, look at the tackles right here. It is an absolute disaster. Derek Carr is not a quarterback who can scramble well and evade sacks. I think I'm not really sure what's going into this pricing, but I think Josh Allen is a little bit more than 50% to get half a sack in what could not be a better matchup, except maybe against the Giants.
What's the price?
Minus 110.
By the way, whenever you see Cesar Ruiz playing right tackle. You click on him, it says he's a guard, and then you remember that they traded up to draft him right as a center or something like that. It does not instill confidence.
Did he play tackle last week? He was a center at Michigan. He played. I missed that. I mean, they had a million injuries, but that's no bueno.
Not great, Bob. All right, my next one. I am going to let's see, which one do I want to do first? All right, let's do this one first. The Los Angeles Clippers of Anaheim are going to play the Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas City. Kansas City has gotten away with some victories here. Okay, they have played. Let's take a look at their schedule. And they lost opening night to the Detroit Lions. They beat the Jacksonville Jaguars, scoring a whopping 17 points. They turned around the Chicago Bears season by dropping 41 on them at home. They squeaked out a win against the New York Football Jets. They squeaked out a win thanks to a nice little turnover by the Minnesota Vikings. And they managed to put up a whopping 19 points against one of the worst defenses that we've ever seen. Okay, so they have essentially been rewarded with wins for, I would say, less than stellar performances. I don't want to say this the wrong way. Patrick Mahomes is not playing as well as Patrick Mahomes can play. He's still playing very, very well. But this is, I don't know what's going on, but it has now been a few straight games of just him not being totally there in terms of the elite level of performance that we see from him. I'm not going so far as to say he's like, a function of the system and all that stuff. That's not what this is about. But the Chargers, I love this spot for them. Justin Herbert played as poorly as we've ever seen Justin Herbert play. Coming off of a bye, I thought a lot of his mistakes were things that he could clean up. And I'm not too worried about the middle finger on the opposite throwing hand. These matchups have always been incredibly close. You look at the lineups between the two, and the thing that I think is really telling here is, yeah, of course, Rashee Rice is great in the slot. They're going to play him 10 snaps, get him 2 targets, what they do. But if I had one person to try and match up with Travis Kelce, it would be Derwin James. And so in this matchup, it's, they're particularly focused on Travis Kelce as the one person that they can consistently throw the ball to. So I love the Chargers getting 5.5 in this spot. The way the Chiefs have been playing, I just don't think they're kind of apt to cover big spreads. They really have not covered big spreads. I don't think that cover against the Broncos deserved to be a cover. And so I like the Chargers plus 5.5 in the spot.
We all know the script. The Chargers are going to score to go up 4 points with, a minute and 36 seconds left. And then Patty Mahomes will drive down and win by 3. You get the cover. Go ahead, Judah.
If we all haven't accumulated our live lines at this point, betting on this script, knowing that we already have our Chargers money line at like plus 270, and we're going to get our Chiefs money line on this drive at like plus 180. If we haven't done that, I think the PFF forecast, we have failed the printing press.
Could not agree more. Truly could not agree more. I got one last one. I actually also have a sack prop. So, we've talked about Baker Mayfield a bunch. He actually, once again, to his credit against Detroit, was not too bad in that regard and not allowing pressures to convert into sacks. The script there, though, is and look, Ali McNeil is a phenomenal player for Detroit, but the Bucs are getting great play from both tackles now. Both Luke Gadecki and, of course, Tristan Wirfs, maybe the best tackle in football, have been phenomenal. Gadecki, in particular, against Aiden Hutchinson, allowed 1 pressure. He's had 6+ in every other game this season. However, the Bucs interior is a problem, and the Atlanta Falcons have a phenomenal duo in David Onyemata and Grady Jarrett on the interior. And they're also 30th in pass rush win rate on the edge. So I think the pressure is going to come from the middle. Baker Mayfield's going to, at some point, it's going to regress to a degree. I like David Onyemata over a quarter sack for plus 140 in that game.
I like it. I like the sack props coming out.
It's that time of the year.
Good to see.
George, this is
sack fall.
George, this is you. I'm there.
You're out? Okay. I have one last one that I want to put up here. I think it is interesting to take a look at the Niners in a little bit of a bounce back spot. I was asking about Debo because if he's playing, I like this a little bit less, but I showed the chart. I'll show it again. of where Brandon Ayuk is in terms of his separation. The guy is running wide open. He should have the 7-11 chain that Jamar Chase got. This guy's open at all points in time. He's also been fantastic at the catch point and after the catch. The Vikings, I do not think are going to be able to stop him. I know that Caleb Evans has played well or decently well so far this year. But against Brandon Ayuk, I'm not particularly worried about it. Of course, on the other side, you've got Byron Murphy, who has not been very good. Maybe they don't want to give Samuel too much of the run. You saw at the end of the game last week, they went to Ayuk pretty consistently, and it paid off. So I'd be surprised if they didn't go to Ayuk once again. The other part of this that I like is you cannot get Christian McCaffrey hurt. They saw that. So I would not expect them to want to run him too much. That means you're going to have to give the ball to Jordan Mason and Elijah Mitchell. I think Ayuk, what I'm getting at, is the way that they need to win the game. And so I like Ayuk in this spot. I like his overs. I would say maybe 4.5, 5.5 would be what his reception prop is. I kind of lean maybe towards 4.5, but I like also over yards. So that is my last one. And now we can pick some winners. I'll start us off. I'll say the one that I really, really liked was that Josh Allen sack prop, as well as the Evan Ingram receptions prop. I think both of those make a ton of sense logically and like the angles there. So I'm all in on the Jaguars is what I'm saying.
Love the double Jags and Judah's Lions, our Lions for me as well.
At -2.5, I like that.
Yeah,
Judah, where's your head at?
Yeah, I like George those two. You mentioned obviously I like the Lions as well. I think that Falcons Niners teaser is very appealing.
Compelling and rich. I like it. Any others that we want to consider? Perhaps a little Scooper Cup.
I like Scooper Cup as well. Yeah, and that would be it for me. Those four are my favorite four, and I do like Scooper Cup as well.
Agreed. I would love to see pricing, but I you can't fade Cup right now. There's no way.
What are you gonna say? Sorry,
I said you can't. I said you always want to see like pricing. I think that's it's just like I almost expect like 9 receptions, 140 yards every time he plays right now.
I think we're also probably still getting a little bit of value of Puka Nacua. And I'm not saying he's going to fall off, but I mean, he had 26 yards, I think 3 catches, dropped a touchdown. Like maybe we still get a little bit of a boost and a benefit of, you're still going to have a big competitor for target share that maybe fades a little bit as time goes on. And then, you mentioned the corners. I mean, Levi Wallace is 73rd out of 82 corners in coverage grade on the outside. And Patrick Peterson's like 56th out of guys that play out wide. Like they're bad.
Our Lord and Savior, Patrick Peterson. By the way, I mentioned Brandon Ayuk. If anyone wants to recall Patrick Peterson's prowess as a coverage defender, you can go rewatch week 1 against Brandon Ayuk and see how that looked. Okay, so we've got our Detroit Lions. We're not fading them like the rest of the nation out there. -2.5 plus 150. We've got 2 Jacksonville Jaguars tomorrow. Josh Allen over 0.25 sacks at -110. And then what were we going to take for Ingram?
I want to do receptions more than yards. I'm guessing it's going to drop at 4.5, but frankly, that'll be probably -130 probably. If it's 5.5 and you get +1, go ahead, Judah.
I see 4.5 -125.
I like that.
Cool. Over 4.5 -125 for Evan Ingram with a not so mobile Trevor Lawrence. We've got Cooper Kupp, that'll probably be 7.5 receptions against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then we've got a teaser. Our Desmond Ridder-led Atlanta Falcons out to 8.5, and our San Francisco 49ers down to 1. I couldn't convince people on the Chargers, the Los Angeles Clippers of Anaheim. But you know what? I did my best. Arjun, I tried. So Arjun will watch this, and he'll respect me a little bit more, and that's what matters. At the end of the day. All right. One last submission. This is from the member of the printing press named David Peasant, who I really appreciate your last name, whether it is right or whether it's actually your last name or you just like it. AJ Brown receiving yards. So there you go. There's a submission from the press. We love you all. Thanks so much for hanging out. We'll be back on Sunday night after Eagles and Dolphins. Peace.